Welcome to Beyond the Pod, presented by SodaStick.com.
Brunette, he moves, Brunette Beckett, he scores! Minnesota has upset the Colorado Avalanche! Andrew Brunette, the game-winning goal!
Here are your hosts, the second greatest scorer in Gopher hockey history, Pat Micheletti, and the second greatest hockey analyst on this podcast, Brandon Mileski.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Beyond the Pod, brought to you by SodaStick.com. Use the code KFAN for 15% off. I'm Brandon Mileski. Pat Micheletti, as always, with me. Hello, Pat.
Hello.
We are guestless today, so that means just you and I talking for a little bit. And I think the last time we were guestless, I came up with a list of potential free agent centers.
Yes,
for you.
You did.
And you know, with the way the Wild are playing right now, and what I always find interesting about the podcast format is, you know, we are recording this on a Thursday morning. So the Wild play at Philadelphia tonight. They play at Buffalo tomorrow. So by the time people are listening to this, like, they might be out of their slump and they might have won 2 in a row. And
right.
But at this very moment that you and I are talking, they've lost 6 of 7. So maybe our thoughts on potential trades have changed, and maybe they'll change again in the next couple weeks here before the trade deadline. Before I get into goaltenders and defensemen, where are you at with trading with the Minnesota Wild, and has their recent play changed your approach at all?
I think my approach has been the same when people were calling them cup contenders. And I have a question for you after I finish this.
Yeah.
Because when I looked at this team, and if you're looking to win a championship, I think there are certain areas that you really need to have. And even when they were playing well, and don't mess with chemistry and all this stuff, and is this team good enough to win it? And we've talked at length about the difference between the regular season and the playoffs. So to answer your question, no, it hasn't changed my opinion. I've said all along, I think to get to that next level, they need a couple more guys. And whatever those positions are, another forward, another defenseman, maybe 2, goaltending, always an issue if you can get another one. Now, those are all wish lists. Maybe you get one of the 3, maybe you get 2 of the 3, maybe you aren't able to get anything at all, depending upon what you want to give up. So yes, I'm pro trade if they can get the right guy.
Yeah, and I mean, you nailed it. A couple months ago, we were kind of talking about all the different positions, and you really could label all 3 positions. We've been talking about the center position forever now.
Yep.
The goaltending situation was kind of wait and see, and maybe you can ride with those 2, maybe you can't. Defensively, my concern from the beginning of the season, Pat, was their depth on defense.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, guys like Kulikov and Merrill exceeded my expectations for a good chunk of the season. And I wasn't too high on Jordy Ben, and I thought, well, if you get an injury to anyone in your top 4, you're kind of in trouble.
Yeah.
And they were able to weather that storm for a good chunk of the season. Now we're getting back to the point where, man, we could definitely use another defenseman, specifically a guy with some size a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's hard at that top 4 with, and as much as I like Brodin and Spurgeon, and I love them, and I know you love them, when you also have them with other smallish guys like Goligoski and Dumba, I mean, I don't know if in a playoff series, if you play a team like a Calgary or you play a team like a St. Louis, how effective you're going to be with that size on the blue line.
And are we getting to the point where is Dumba fragile a little bit? So to your point, if you have to play the max game of 28 to win the cup, probably every series won't go 7, but you never know. But can a guy hold up? And you're looking for durability in the playoffs. Yeah, and yes, guys play through injuries, and but how effective are they when they're injured and all that? So, I really believe they're looking hard, to acquire something on the back end. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if the right deal was there. And I don't, blockbuster sounds, outlay, it's crazy, but that would involve current players with current players, and draft picks and all that kind of stuff. A bigger trade, maybe not a blockbuster, but a bigger trade.
Yeah.
Now, before I forget my question, can you define for me the definition of a cup contender?
Well, before you get to that, I wanted to respond to your Dumba,
Okay, go ahead.
Your Dumba comment. One, Dumba needs to stop getting in fights because he's gotten hurt twice now getting in fights, and both kind of unnecessary fights. I mean, the first
And
one
he's
was
not
kind
a fighter.
No, I mean, he did in juniors. But there's a difference between fighting in juniors against those size players and fighting in the NHL against those size players. But I always find it interesting. The Wild over the years have never been the biggest, strongest team, and people really want, hey, if we're going to go up against the Calgarys, we need to play a more physical style of play. And I think you bring up a good point of, well, if you start, unless you have that identity already on your roster, I don't know how good it is. I even had someone tweeting me back and forth the other day about, God, Spurgeon's got to get more gritty and got to play more physical. It's like, well, no, because if you start having him play that game, he's going to be out of the lineup like Dumba is right now.
Right.
And then you're not going to have him in the game. Like Kaprizov, I like that Kaprizov's not willing to back down to some of these guys. But one of these times he's going to get hurt and then he's going to miss a couple weeks. And what did we accomplish out of it? So, we are what we are. You got Matt Zuccarello, you got Fiala, you got Kaprizov. Like, those guys aren't going to play that style of hockey, and you're not going to succeed doing that. And eventually, if you try to get outside your identity and start playing a physical brand, like, it's all great until you're sitting up in the press box for a couple weeks.
If you try to mimic a team that you are not, you are going to lose every time. You're going to lose every time. You nailed it with, yeah, of course you take the body, all parts of the game, but what is your team identity? They possess the puck. When they possess the puck and they're moving, and they have skill up front. There's no question. So, but if you start trying to play a game that's not your game, you're going to lose. You're going to lose.
To your cup contender question, that's an interesting question, because frankly, I think people's views on what a cup contender has changed a bit over the last decade or so, right? Like, it, kind of like in the 90s and 2000, or even once again in the 2000s, it was got to have these big, strong, physical teams, and the LA Kings would win a couple of years, and everyone would try to duplicate that, and then Chicago would win a couple with Kane and Taves and Hossa and Keith and Seabrook on the back end, and so, well, that's the way to go, and the Crosbys. And so, I mean, I think our opinion on this has changed. There was a good stretch of play where, man, you don't really need to spend a lot of money on a goaltender. You just need a goaltender to get hot. Well, then last year, basically the best four goalies were all in the Final Four. So, frankly, I don't know if there is just one way to be a cup contender. I would say, generally speaking, got to have good goaltending. I think you got to be strong up the middle at the center position. You clearly have to have star power of some sort. I mean, all these teams that are winning have elite goal scorers. And then you probably got to have a legit number one defenseman. That's asking a lot. That's a lot of different parts. But and a lot of those areas were short, Pat.
Yeah, no question. But I'll rephrase it in the sense that I talk to people now, and 2 months ago they would think, oh, this team's a cup contender.
Yeah.
Now, because they're in a losing streak, oh, geez, they're not a cup contender. They're not in the playoffs. Okay, so I looked at the standings. Okay, and so I'm saying, okay, who's a cup contender? Well, is Nashville a cup contender?
No.
They're behind Minnesota. Are they a cup contender?
No.
Is Edmonton a cup contender? Is Vegas a cup contender?
Yes.
They're sitting at 64 points. Minnesota has 65. Is Vegas a cup contender? You see where I'm going? See where I'm going? And so, what is a cup contender? If you just take the regular season out and then you go to the playoffs and the teams that make the playoffs, then maybe you can say, this team's got a chance because of what the things that you stated. But to say a team is not a cup contender, I mean, I don't know I guess I don't understand the definition of what some people think is a cup contender.
Yeah, I mean, what's concerning about the Wild, Pat, during this last stretch of 7 games is they look like a completely different team, right? I mean,
No doubt.
every team goes through slumps and they go through issues and they go through moments where they can't score, where the power play's bad, or they go through stretches where their goaltending's bad. Right now, they look like a different team. So I was one of those people, a month ago that's saying, "Hey, this is a Stanley Cup contender," and I still think there's a chance they can be a cup contender. But this isn't a stretch where, hey, you just ran into some hot goaltending for a while, or your goalie just happened to not show up for a little while.
Yep.
Like this is an
that
entire.
We're playing well, but we're just not winning.
Yeah, it's an entire team breakdown right now.
Yeah,
Pat.
yeah, and look at, I mean, and look at the team that they're playing tomorrow night, the Buffalo Sabres. All right, they go into Toronto last night. Now Buffalo is sitting last in the league, pretty close, right above Montreal. They smoke them in Toronto, 5-1. So goes back to the point of it's a really good league, and if you're not ready to play, you're going to lose.
Yep.
And Toronto, obviously,
the bottom team is not that far from the top team.
Can you imagine the people in Toronto, what they're saying today? What is going? How could we lose to this bottom feeder? Blah blah blah.
Well, it just happened when the Wild played at Ottawa, right? We all looked at that game as, hey, this is the one game on the Canadian road trip the Wild should win pretty easily. And Ottawa, the Wild didn't play well, but Ottawa came to play that night.
They did. They did.
They came out and sent the message out right away, and
so
believe they could win.
Yep. And so if you're not ready, you can lose on any night.
All right, Pat. Let's talk some potential trades then. So,
okay.
We talked about the centers, I don't know, a month ago or so. So if you want to go back and listen or watch that episode, you can. Yep. I want to talk goalies and defensemen today.
Okay.
And as I did last time, I am looking at players that are going to be pending free agents because with the way the Wild are set up with the salary cap, if you're going to keep the players you have on your roster and just add to that, you're going to have to look at rentals.
Okay, so we're not looking at moving anybody.
I'm not doing the blockbuster thing just because that gets complicated. Now you're opening up an entire Pandora's box of anyone in the league can be acquired at that point, right?
Correct.
So I'm looking at rentals that are going to be free agents this offseason. I'm looking at players that are not going to be on playoff teams, right?
Okay.
What are the odds the Vegas Golden Knights are going to trade you someone, right? It's not likely.
No.
So at the goaltender position, before I throw out some names, how interested are you in getting a goaltender, and what is your belief in Cam Talbot and Kaapo Kähkönen moving forward?
Unknown because I thought Talbot, again, we talked about it the other night on Fanline. I thought Talbot was fine against Vegas, but can he win the big one? And it hasn't been proven yet that he can win a 7th game. Kähkönen, we don't know. Can he hold up in that pressure cooker 7-game series and then another 7-game series? Until he gets the opportunity, we won't know. So that would lean me to, if there was one available, I would strongly consider, because if you can't get that defense, that shutdown D or bigger D or mobile D or whatever, then, if you do, then you're protecting your goalie a little bit more. But if not, and you're going with this set of D-core with your current goaltending situation, then I'd get nervous.
All right. So out of all the positions to acquire, obviously we know it's challenging to be able to bring in a center. Using my criteria, there's not a lot out there for goaltenders, which means to me that these two, I shouldn't say these two. One of them is going to go at a high price, because any contender that needs a goalie, like, there's only so many options to go with, and he's historically been pretty good. And you've heard the name Marc-Andre Fleury, Chicago Blackhawks. Obviously there's rumors he might go back to Vegas.
Yeah,
but he's the big one on the market, and obviously we don't know what the asking price is, but depending on price, I would be very interested in Marc-Andre Fleury.
I would be also. The latest I've heard out of him, and this, I was telling my son Alex this the other night, is that he is saying, nope, I want to stay. I want to stay. I want to stay. Now, his agent might be telling him, say that, because do you want to keep playing? Yeah, I want to keep playing. Okay, so if you're going to say no now, that is called posturing, because that team may come in and say, okay, we'll extend you 2 more years or 1 more year or whatever.
Sure.
He's not going to want to trade unless he's guaranteed something, I don't think. So I think
then the Wild are out.
Yep, that's problematic for this
Yep.
team.
Yep.
So I think the chances of acquiring him would be really, really dicey, really tough.
All right. The other option, and I've brought his name up to you previously, Pat, would be Braden Holtby with the Dallas Stars. Dallas still might be knocking on the door of a playoff spot, but maybe hopefully in the next couple of weeks they go down the standings a little bit. But they've got their goaltender of the future, and Jake Ottinger, who's been playing pretty well.
Yeah,
Holtby's won a cup. His stats aren't as good as when I first brought up his name. They're slipping a little bit, but he's still a .912 save percentage. Goals against average, I think, like a 2.7. But Pat, for about the 8th consecutive year, the analytics on the Minnesota Wild love the way they play defense and believe that their goaltender is giving up more than they should be giving up. So it is always a spot that if you can get some competent goaltending behind, a pretty decent defensive structure, Holtby's numbers you could see, improving here. And then, like I said, he's done it before in the playoffs, so that's not going to concern him. And one, he could end up being your number one guy, but also at least gives you a little bit of insurance in case, hey, we're not fully all in on the 2 we have now.
I like him because I think he'd be excited to win another cup. If he knows he's not going to make it there, maybe his focus level, his excitement, knowing he's coming to a good team, that may say, okay, I'm here, I'm ready, play me.
Yep.
And that, I'm gonna keep his name right in front of my eyes here, because we won't know for a couple of weeks, which is fine. We'll know where Dallas is. We'll know where this team is. And what's the asking price going to be? It again, right? What do you give up?
Well, that's what I like with Holtby is I don't think you're gonna have to give up a ton.
I don't know. I don't think it's a first rounder.
No chance. No chance. He's a first round.
A third, a fourth, maybe a prospect that you've lost favor with, and it could be a draft pick that you've already drafted. Minnesota has plenty to give up.
That's why I kind of like going the Braden Holtby route. Is one, I don't think you have to give up a ton to get him.
Yep.
2, his salary is $2 million. So because he's so, and we're getting to the point where it's prorated portion, right?
Right.
So it's going to be, I don't know the exact math, but let's say it's $400,000 against cap or $300,000 against cap, whatever that number is.
That allows you to get another player.
You can do other things. You can go get a center. You can go get a defenseman. So like Marc-Andre Fleury would hamstring you from being able to go out and get another guy, whereas you can bring in Holtby and still make another move on your blue line or at the center position.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm definitely all in on Braden Holtby. All right, and that's literally all I have for goaltenders. So there's not a lot of options available, Pat. The good news is most teams that consider them Stanley Cup contenders are already kind of solidified at that position. So there might not be as many other teams that would want to get those 2 guys, but there's not a lot of options out there.
No.
Given my criteria. All right, there are a lot of options on the blue line. So I've got a list of names. I got about, 6 names for you.
Okay.
I'd like to get your opinion on all of them. We'll begin with the most expensive, and he's not having a good year, and he's 32 years old. Can't say I would have a ton of interest in him, but I want to, and I also kind of want players, Pat. I'm kind of looking at players that have more size, right? I don't want to bring in another guy who's a Goligoski, Spurgeon, Brodin type, right?
Right.
So all these guys are 6 feet and above. PK Subban.
No, disruptor.
Yep.
All about him.
What did he get here? Not that I've watched a lot of New Jersey Devil hockey, but the stats for him have been on the decline.
I'll tell you a quick story about him. I'm doing a Westwood 1 game in Winnipeg, Nashville, game 6 of the semifinals of the Western Conference. And so I get there with our crew, and their bus pulls up, right? Everyone is just in a normal suit and all this stuff, normal. You're aware to the game. He walks in. He's like one of the last guys off the bus. He walks in with this cowboy hat. It was like he
He's
was,
got some personality.
yeah, but it was completely different than the rest of his teammates. It was just kind of weird. It was kind of
Yeah.
weird.
I don't have a problem with what guys dress like. That doesn't
I know, but it just
bother me at all.
But just yeah. Anyway.
But from a performance standpoint, he's definitely been on the decline. Before we get to the rest of them, I want to tell our listeners and viewers about sodastick.com. They sponsor Beyond the Pod. You can get your original Minnesota sports inspired goods at sodastick.com. If you haven't seen it yet, you got to check it out. All of their apparel screen printed here in Minnesota on super soft, super comfy shirts. You will love it, and we're going to hook you up with 15% off your next order. So use the code KFN for 15% off. That is sodastick.com, original Minnesota sports inspired goods. Code KFN for 15% off your next order. All right, next defenseman. I believe he's the captain for the Seattle Kraken, Mark Giordano, obviously selected in the expansion draft from the Calgary Flames. He's up there in age. He's 38 years old, but he's still somewhat productive. He's got 6 goals, 17 assists, and could give you some size and some grit and play a little power play for you on the blue line.
Watched him last night. I thought he had a really good game. Moves well. Can play some power play. And was the captain in Calgary. A lot of rumors have him going back to Calgary, which I wouldn't want to see. I would be just fine with the Mark Giordano. Seems like a really, really good guy too.
Yep. Another name that I've heard a lot of people throw out just because, Pat, we love to have Minnesota connections coming back to Minnesota. Nick Leddy, not as big as some of these others, but he is listed at 6 feet tall. Obviously, we know we've seen him play at Eden Prairie and the University of Minnesota. We know he can skate and add a little bit of offense, but currently on the Detroit Red Wings. Any interest in Nick Leddy, who is a pending free agent?
Well, I know Nick. He's a terrific person, absolutely terrific person. Listen, he was a draft pick of this team, right?
I remember.
Yeah.
Cam Barker.
Oh,
and boy.
I think he would fit in really, really well here. Listen, the New York Islanders miss him. New York Islanders got older this past year, and it wasn't for the better. And so I think they really miss him back there. He's steady. He's not flashy. And he's a really good defender. I would have no issue with him coming here.
All right. Out of all the names on this list, and I should probably check where Anaheim is in the standings before I assume that they're not in the playoff mix, because they've actually been kind of they're kind of
you know what, they've been better.
They're knocking on the door of a playoff spot.
Yep.
Yep. And out of all the players, Pat, I would say this guy's game I know the least, so I'm hoping you know something about him. I just know that he's 6'4". Hampus Lindholm.
Yeah, but here's the problem with Lindholm. I mean, he's going to go somewhere. In fact, I read Pat Verbeek, who is their new GM, came out and listed 3 players that if they cannot extend, he's going to move them. Doesn't want to lose them to free agency. And that'd be him, Raquel, and the third guy.
I've always liked Raquel, by the way.
I love Raquel.
Every time he plays the Wild.
Oh, my God. And, he's a bigger winger. He's a playoff site. I mean, man, that's a guy I would take a look at, although he's a winger. So, but you know what? You can find room for good players.
Yeah.
If you can get Lindholm, oh, man. I think you're good. He's going to probably command the most, I would think. Because he's still pretty young and really good player.
All right, I know you've mentioned this name before. He's 6'3", but I don't necessarily think he plays the bigger physical style that we're looking for. But it's not often a guy of this talent is available. John Klingberg, Dallas Stars. He's only got 1 goal this year, but 26 points. Not producing as much offensively as he has in the past, but You know the talents there.
They're going to move him because they can't extend him. They can't afford him. And he would all of a sudden be thrust into a role of his offense has gone down because they've kind of taken that away from him a little bit. Who's the other Finnish guy they have? Hanna, I can't remember.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He's kind of taken over Klingberg's role. I mean, if you can get him for your power play and a power play that's struggling, he can run that power play. Can you imagine him on top with with the group of guys that they have down? Oh boy. I think he'd be great. I think he'd be great.
I wonder if there's a situation where you could bring him in and trade Dumba. I mean, I have no idea what the Dallas Stars think of Dumba and whether they would want him under contract for. He's another year under contract, correct?
Yep.
But if there's a way to, kind of make that swap, so you're not, kind of screwing up your overall rotation you've got going on.
You probably could, but
because what I'm saying is, I think you're going to trade Dumba in the offseason anyway.
Right. But here's the partial problem is that if you trade Dumba for Klingberg, right? Let's just say for this exercise, it's a 1-for-1 swap.
This hypothetical trade, yeah.
Yes. What do you do with Klingberg then? Do you let him walk?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm doing it as you are going to have to trade Dumba or Fiala this offseason anyway.
Yeah.
So
Minnesota might have to get more back then if you're talking a Dumba deal, right? Because you could
the problem is he only got 1 year left on his contract, but after this season. But
yeah, you can because if the plan is to move Dumba, you don't want to move Dumba for Klingberg and then lose Klingberg. So you're getting him for 2 months and just walk.
Yeah, but I mean, you're not really gonna when you're trading Dumba this offseason. If you do, it's not like you're bringing in another player for him anyways. You're only going to be trying to do the prospects or picks thing anyway. So I mean, it's like you're giving up picks or prospects for a rental on Klingberg.
That's why I'm saying maybe try to get a draft pick out of it if you can.
All right, my last player I'm throwing your way, more of a stay-at-home defenseman, but definitely big, physical, 6'3", 219 pounds. Ben Sherratt for the Montreal Canadiens.
He's going to be. Everybody wants him. He's been linked to Florida. He's been linked to, other teams that are looking to upgrade. He would be terrific here. Yes, there's no question about it. The question is, will he be? Will he be? Will he be moved? It looks like he will be. I would love to get a guy like that. You get a guy like that, that is shot blocker and just pretty reliable guy.
All right, one more Wild related topic before I do want to talk college hockey and specifically University of Minnesota with you. Kalen Addison, we've seen him in moments and stretches, and there are glimpses of you can see the, he's got the good shot and he's mobile on the blue line and can skate laterally. He's very young. He's 21 years old, but given the point I've already made with you of
size,
Spurgeon's small, Brodin's not the biggest guy right now. You got Goligoski, who knows what his future is. So, and if you want Addison here in the future, like you would want him in a top 4 role, I don't want him on the 5-6 spot. Is he a guy? I don't like to give up on guys that are 21 years old because he needs to put some muscle on him. I guess is the point I'm trying to make, Pat. He's got to add some muscle to his frame, and I know there's only so much he's going to be able to add, but he seems like a guy where he is going to get beat up playing in the National Hockey League. He puts himself in situations a lot where he's taking big hits. It's not like Spurgeon, where Spurgeon avoids contact pretty regularly, and Brodin does. Like they're pretty savvy players, whereas Addison kind of puts himself in bad situations. I can just see him long term kind of being and not that we've seen it yet, but I can see him getting beat up a little bit at the NHL level.
It's a big league, and if you don't know how to handle your body, like Spurgeon does, you're going to get pasted an awful lot, and it's a long year, and it's a grind, and if you have the luxury of using Addison correctly, then he can survive. Because he's good on the power play, moves everything all the attributes that you laid out, no question. But you can't play him in a 5-6 role. It doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
So at some point in time, you got to look at, and there's another guy that another team may say, boy, does he fit what we want to do. We've got big defensemen. We need a puck mover. We need this. So, you put him on another team with another partner who is going to handle that other stuff, then you're fine. But as of today, I think they're kind of forced to play him. I really do. Because,
they don't have anything else.
Right. Exactly. But do I think he certainly has a skill level to play in this league and contribute. But is it a right fit here? Long term, if you're looking at it, with Spurgeon and Brodin aren't going anywhere. We know that. The question on Dumba, we don't know what their plans are. But if you had those three, then he's a spot player.
All right, Pat, let's move on to college hockey. We got a pretty good run here for your Golden Gopher hockey team. They've won 8 in a row. They won the Big Ten title. They've jumped all the way up to tied for third in the pairwise. If you remember, it wasn't that long ago, Pat, where they were kind of flirting with those teams of being in that range of not even being in the tournament. Now they could get a number 1 seed out of it.
It's amazing, and I credit the coach. I really do. Conversation after conversation. No, I like this team. I believe in this team. They believe in themselves, and we're going to get back on track and get rolling. And it's so interesting. The transformation of this team started with their freshmen. They all of a sudden weren't freshmen anymore, and I say it all the time, and almost to the point where I nauseate myself. That next jump to the next level is always a time where it takes time to get acclimated. And all of a sudden, Tristan Brose, who struggled early, Rhett Pitlick, Huglin, I'm missing one. Doesn't matter. But it took time. And now these guys have absolutely taken off and have been really, really good for them. Now, Matthew Nyes, on the other hand, from the get-go, he was a horse and has been great all year. But these guys started playing better. And the older guys now Ben Myers is ridiculously good. I really feel bad for him because, you want to talk about acquiring a center. Yes. If he was eligible for the playoffs, he would be in the Minnesota Wild lineup if they were to sign him. I think he's that good, but unfortunately, he won't be able to play in the playoffs. So,
will he be signed by the Minnesota Wild, though, Pat?
What's that?
Will he be signed by the Minnesota Wild, though?
I listen. I think they have.
They're interested.
They have a better chance than many of the teams. He went to their camp last year. I know they love him, and I think they're going to make a big run at him.
It's a good place for him to fit into a lineup with a good team where there's other good players, but they're also at a position of need. I mean, that's a pretty good fit.
Well, think about it, right? Let's see. When you're looking at where you want to go, and you have to say, what is my best chance of making a team? Well, Minnesota's going to have to have guys in their lineup that are making in that $1 million range, at least for 3 years.
Yep.
And you say, I'll take my chances, rather than going to a team where they're loaded up the middle. It's going to take a while, and all that stuff. Let's not forget
he could get in the lineup next year.
Let's not forget, he's 23 years old.
Yep.
So it's not like he's, Boldy's age or Rossi's age or Addison's age.
He can jump right in. He's a grown man.
Jump right in. Yep.
Yeah. And I think it's pretty incredible, Pat, the run the Gophers have been on, given they lose their starting goalie in the middle of the season unexpectedly. And
Yep.
let's face it, over the last couple of years, Pat, LaFontaine's been their best player.
Without a doubt. Without
so-
a doubt. I will say this. He wasn't having a great year
Yes.
this year, but that may have been because the team in front of him wasn't playing very well. So that's why it's always hard with goaltenders, because how is a team really, shutting it down or not making egregious errors in front of them? So it's a combination of both.
Of course.
But they've rallied behind Justin Close. They love the kid, and that's been a big factor in their rebound also.
And not only have the Gophers been winning, they just absolutely shellacked Wisconsin last weekend.
Oh.
Can you tell me what has happened to Wisconsin? Because they were, I know, they obviously lost Cole Caulfield and players like that, but
Dylan Holloway, yep.
Yeah, but what in the heck happened to them?
Well, I think they miscalculated on what they were with their prospect pool, meaning they didn't plan for the loss of the players that they lost. But that's been an ongoing theme with the Tony Granato era. His philosophy is get him in, get him out. Get him, thinking more about the player instead of the program, meaning, okay, let's get their mindset on playing for the Badgers instead of the mindset. The mindset has been, okay, if you're ready, I'm telling you to go. And all of a sudden that team concept, that team winning, that building a program is out the door. And I think that's hurt them quite a bit. Listen, they could have Keandre Miller in their lineup today. And I thought Miller left a year early, but it was like, you're ready to go. And so, I think Tony's a really good coach. He is, but I just think their philosophy about the program has got to change because the mindset of the player isn't on winning a national championship. It's more of, I'm here to get a year older.
How to get to the next level.
A year better, and then I'm out of here.
Yep.
And so you can't have that if you want to win national championships.
All right, let's talk about other teams in the state. Minnesota State Mankato is the number 1 team in the pairwise right now. St. Cloud, number 9. UMD getting a little close to being on the bubble there. They are at number 11 in the pairwise. Any thoughts on any of those 3 teams?
Well, it's really interesting because what's Duluth, 9? Did you say?
They're 11. St. Cloud's 9.
Okay, they're 11 now. They play St. Cloud this weekend, and it's going to be a great series. Should St. Cloud win the series, they would get home ice and host UMD next weekend.
And they just played like last Tuesday.
Correct. Now, the rule is if you're not eligible for an at-large berth if you are under 500.
Really?
Okay?
I did not know that.
Yes. Now that doesn't eliminate you because you can win your conference championship and get that bid.
Yeah.
But if St. Cloud wins this weekend and then beats them next weekend, UMD will be under 500. And they would have to win the conference title. Right now, they have a 10% chance of making the NCAAs.
Wow. I was going to say, even if they lose those games anyways, they might be getting close to being knocked out on the
right
pairwise anyway. So
and they're having a dickens of a time scoring goals. They just think they can't score. And Scott admitted to me, hey, if we don't get to 3 goals, we're not winning. And they lose to a bottom feeder, one of the lowest teams in college hockey. I'll state it that way. In Miami University last weekend, they lost 3-0. And that's a team St. Cloud beat on their home ice, combined total score in 2 games, 19-1. Okay. So, it's a really big weekend up in Duluth this weekend.
All right, Pat, we'll talk about that big weekend next week on Beyond the Pod. I'll also talk to you tomorrow night on Wild Fan Line.
Sounds great. See you tomorrow. Right. Thanks.
He's Pat Micheletti. I'm Brandon Mileski. This has been another episode of Beyond the Pod. As always, it's brought to you by sodastick.com. Use the code KFAN for 15% off your next order at sodastick.com. A reminder, you can watch this podcast on the KFAN YouTube channel. If you are watching, you can listen to it on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcast. Just make sure you hit that subscribe button. We'll talk to you next week right here on Beyond the Pod. Bye.